This ribeye has traveled 2,874 miles to be here. The cow was raised in Wyoming, shipped to Wisconsin for slaughter. Then the meat was frozen and sent to New York for packaging, then to a distribution center, then to your local grocery store, where it sat on a shelf until you came along. Bon appetit. And what does it take to keep your food from spoiling during those trips? Chemical treatments before freezing, genetic manipulation, and of course, the secret ingredient, love of money. Freshness and nutrition take a major backseat on the horrific road trip your food takes. Regardless of politics, we can all agree that eating beef that travels 3,000 miles in a diesel-powered freezer, pumping out pollution when healthier cows are raised down the street, is insane. That's why we created From the Farm, an industry-disrupting platform that directly connects customers and local farmers with a website that's as easy to use as Airbnb. This gives you fresher, higher-quality foods that haven't been shipped all over the world. With From the Farm, these numbers turn into these numbers. It also strengthens communities, reduces pollution, and helps small farmers survive and thrive. From the Farm was founded by A.J. Richards, an active homesteader, and Brooke Entz, a CrossFit Games athlete and an Amazonian warrior in the movies Wonder Woman and Justice League. She clearly has a passion for healthy food and a healthy lifestyle. And since both AJ and Brooke come from generations of ranchers and farmers, they know what they're talking about. The healthy choice is always the better choice. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision. It's an investment into our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.
What's up, everybody? Brooke, how's it going? Can't hear you. I think you're on mute there.
You're right. I was on mute.
There we go. Awesome.
The weather finally changed here and it's put me through it. So if I occasionally go on mute, it's because I have to hack like an old woman.
Isn't it crazy? The weather was like 80 degrees way late and then it just turned the next day.
Dude.
We got some snow up here in Cody. I heard Utah got snow in different parts of Utah, but it was like 80 degrees the day before. It's crazy. So cool.
Yeah,
well,
it's cold.
Yeah.
It went from like triple digits to a low of 32 in a matter of like 4 days.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah.
We need the moisture though. So glad to see it in some of these areas for sure. Especially up here. We had the wildfires raging in Wyoming and that moisture came in and helped slow it down a little bit. I know they're still mopping up and still fighting, but that weather definitely helped for these Wyoming fires. So, welcome everybody to From the Farm, our live Q&A show we do every week. We're excited to be back with you today. And today we're even more excited because it's the first guest we've ever had on the show for the live From the Farm. And I'm really excited to have this conversation. We have Henry Barlow on today. Henry Barlow is the founder of Utah Beef Producers. I had the pleasure of working with Henry for about 6 months as they were gearing up to open. And I learned a lot from this guy. So you're going to learn a lot while we visit with him today. He's in the green room waiting. But you guys are going to learn a lot about the character of men that it takes. Henry's got quite a bit of experience throughout his past that he'll share with you that is kind of led him up to this day, which is a lot of what Brooke and I believe about From the Farm. And so anyway, I'm excited to get this conversation going. We're going to talk a little bit about the plant, of course, because that's the mission and the meat processing plant. But I think today we're going to, Brooke, spend more time just learning from Henry about who he is as a person, because you've got all these different people engaging in the supply chain and the food supply chain, trying to help make a difference from when COVID showed us how weak it was. And so there's all these people going and doing direct action, putting a lot of time and resources, money, all of those things to make it happen. And now we need the American people to respond and get behind these small localized food systems and help them survive. The current economy is not designed for them to succeed. So we've got to rally as a people and help make that happen. So let's do this. Let's bring Henry on.
Yeah, bring him on. I haven't seen him forever.
Henry.
Hey, gang. Good to see you guys.
Good to see you. I appreciate how you open that. Hey, gang. I think there's got to be a UBP shirt that says, "Hey, gang," for sure.
There you go.
So, there's going to be one on there and says, "What's up, everybody?" So just kind of a habit.
It's kind of crazy because I've got a bunch of relatives that would never be caught dead on social, right? We've been trained all of our lives, you just stay off of social, and Facebook's the devil and all this kind of stuff. So we grew up that. And I was recently to a gathering with a bunch of my relatives, and so many of them were quoting things that the only way they would know is off of social. And so they'd walk up to shake my hand and they'd say, "Hey, gang."
Oh, that's awesome.
That just really cemented it. And so I've called some of those guys out that would never be caught dead on social, but they're on social, obviously.
Yeah. It's like the Amish hiding a phone and doing work from a phone when they're not supposed to have one, but they're getting it done anyway.
Exactly. Well, I remember the first time you did your tinfoil hat.
Yeah.
And even kind of was laughing about that. We thought it was a gag. And then you're just like, you know what? I'm just going to own this.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. We need those slogans, those catchphrases for people to help hang on to it and stick with us. So I think it's helpful. But
yeah,
man, Henry, I'm glad to see you again. We've stayed in touch a little bit. You've been super busy, and so have I, but kind of keeping tabs on one another. And I'm glad to have you here. I'm really excited to kind of introduce the people that have been following From the Farm and me to somebody that's, shed a lot of light in my life. It was a pivotal time that I got to come and work with you just before we went live with From the Farm. So things are really gearing up, and I learned a lot. This beyond, certainly, and the most important, beyond being in the beef world, like who we are as people is what matters the most, right? Where we go is the character we bring with us. And you have a really strong character. I mean, it came from a lot of challenges, I'm sure, throughout your life, and you just built upon those. So why don't you kind of open up, tell people a little bit about who you are, where you live, and kind of what led you on this journey to take on such a big challenge.
Well, I live in Utah County. I have farms in San Pete County, and we, of course, built the plant in Sevier County. And so my life for 750 days or so has been leave a great big stewardship here in Utah County and go spend 4 days at least in Sevier County, just pushing hard on the plant. I certainly didn't envision, a decade ago that would be my story. But the more and more you talk to people, everybody says somebody ought to do something about it, and somebody ought to do something about it. And certainly during COVID, when ranchers had to wait up to 6 months, sometimes a year, to get their animals processed, including myself, that just really was an eye opener. And I just saw how delicate the food system is in our meat supply. So everybody's been thinking about it and talking about it for a long time, and I certainly didn't need more responsibility, but I took on that baton and we got it started. It was quite a journey. And of course, some of that backstory, AJ, because you were with me in the early days, when we started down in Richfield. But what a powerful journey. And it's literally been a journey of miracles for sure.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was going to be my first question. That's something that I felt and learned from you the most, was your accountability to the miracles, to the focus you brought to them. I mean, a slogan, I call them Henryisms, and they come up all the time. One of the things you're really good at was having those slogans that just stick. And so I find myself repeating them often, different ones. And I'm not even, I wasn't even aware I held on to them, but one of the things you always said was, I often find that miracles come with a first and a last name. So
Yep.
Speak to that. Tell us what you mean by that.
So true. Yeah. I think a lot of times we think that, God's going to send us a miracle and it's going to be some vivid bolt of lightning kind of an experience. But the reality of it is, most of the time, the miracles show up in our lives, not just mine, but everybody's, and they show up with the first and the last name. So I think if we're paying attention, then you can really count the people that walk into your life right at the right time, right for the right reason. I mean, they literally show up with the first and the last name. And oftentimes there's people that show up in your life for a reason. And other times people show up in your life for a season. And then once in a while you get friends that show up in your life for a lifetime. So, but it certainly is a journey of miracles.
And you counted those, or I'm assuming you're still counting them, because when I was there, you were up to 140. Now this, and when I say this, I just want people to know, like, when I say 140, those were 140 written down, deliberate miracles that you account for. This isn't just, you're not frivolous with this. When you say there, when I was there and you were counting miracles, each one of those was very specific, and you kept track, which I thought was just fascinating, special, really. And so where are you up to now? I mean, I haven't been there for over a year, so.
Well, we're over 200.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. And I think, when you're paying attention, and what it does is it helps somebody show up with the mind of gratitude. And that, besides being a message for everybody that hears this message and my message, the message is first and foremost for me, myself, because the grind that I have had to face, for all these many weeks, the most important conversation that I can have. And so any of us in a fight like this is the conversation between our own ears. And so counting those miracles and numbering those miracles and, really being in a mind and a place of gratitude, it helps you to keep that head conversation the right way.
I think that's actually a good, a great observation or example of what we can do as a community or just people in a culture where it's so focused on self. Truly, miracles are happening around you all the time. But the only way you're going to see it and then be able to be grateful for it is you have to take your eyes off of yourself and what you have and what you need and what you want and all these things, and open up to the people around you and genuinely want to get to know them, because you're also not going to know what kind of miracle they're meant to be in your life if you don't hear them. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So if any of you guys are at home thinking like, I don't have 200 miracles, like, you actually might. But you have to be in a headspace and in a space where you're willing to see it and you're willing to be grateful for it in the moment and then be aware of it, because then it will stick, just like it's sticking for Henry, being able to remember and mark them down, and it means something.
Yeah.
Well, when you're going through some really stressful times, I just want to be grateful and express gratitude for how much it means when somebody walks up to me and just, the smallest little comment. It makes a difference, because, the reality of it is we're up to something big enough that it's destined to fail without God's support. And of course, that's by design. I mean, on my top left of my whiteboard, that's what it reads. But this last week, I had a couple of powerful experiences. A couple of my guys said, come on, let's go get a shake, get away from this and go get a shake. So Mr. Wood from Elsinore, this is thanks to you. Never met the guy before in my life. We're up there and I'm going to go pay for a shake. And he goes, this man's money is no good here. And he bought my shake. And he says, I bet there's not 50 people in this whole valley that aren't just so grateful for what you're doing. And, that means a lot. Also this week, walk into Costa Vida, have a guy that's been his entire career working at a big Packer plant, working on their vac systems, and that says, hey, so Kevin, thank you. Comes up, says, if you need any help on anything like that, you call me. I'm right here. Yeah. So it's been amazing how many people just care and how much that means to me. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, that resonates with Brooke and I too, because the same, for us taking on this mission, like it will only, the enemy is so great that will only happen by God's design and the miracles and the people wanting to support it. It's just too big. Yeah. And when we have this crowdfunding going and the comments that we get are as powerful as the dollars that come with them. And even the people that don't have money to put in, just when they tell us, we love this, we think this needs to happen, it gives that extra confidence to keep going, because it's huge uphill battle. So when one of the things, talking about challenges, one of the things I also took from you is that the saying that, God doesn't tell us everything we're going to be up against, because if he did, some of us would choose not to be born, right? So talk to us, share with us about some of these share with us how, like, what's your routine? That's the one thing I also noticed about you too. You have an incredible routine that you are committed to, and your morning starts with communicating with the one and only, with God. How does your morning routine set you up to take these challenges on throughout the day? What does that look like?
Well, recently I invented a new word to help myself, and really I shared it with a couple of my family members, and there's so many people that have asked me to share it with them, but the word is wet wraps, WETRAPS. And the W stands for write your story. And I think it's important that we journal, when you, like the journey that you guys are on, I hope you're keeping a journal because it matters. Your story is too important not to tell. E is for exercise. So that's speaking Brooke's language right there. So I wish I was, I wish I was a tenth of what Brooke is on the E for exercise.
It's an ebb and flow. It's a lifelong journey. That's the thing,
Yeah.
I
know, but you don't realize, Brooke, but it really is inspiring to, just see how you go after things. So that's what the E is for. The T is to set aside time to think and ponder. And I think when you're up to big things, and just like the things that you guys are up to, you've really got to create that headspace where you can really ponder it and get deep, because it's a chess game. So that's the T. And R is for read and study, develop a love of learning. So each day, that's part of my daily rituals, is I go through and I try to read and study. I've had to figure out things that are absolutely out of my wheelhouse, building this plant. And it's amazing what you can read and study and find out about. So that's been a key thing for me. A is attitude, to show up with an attitude of gratitude. I mean, really do a self-check when you start your day, to really show up with an attitude of gratitude. And the P is pray, of course, pray. And really invite, like you said, AJ, that divine intervention to walk into your life. And you need that. I need that. And the last letter is S, and that's for really Sherry. My wife has really taught me the power of that. And that is sunrise, sunshine, and sunset. And all of my life, I was taught not to look at the sun. And now, whenever I can, I try to catch that morning sunrise looking straight into the sun. And so at least one time during the day, if you don't catch the sunrise, then make it a point to catch the sunshine or the sunset. So that's one thing that helps manage my daily rituals. But I think a lot of times we think that the big things in life are the things that are guiding us. And really, it's just the little things.
It's always the little things, man.
Yeah.
And that's why I think, in anything, whether it's in relationships, it's the little things that end up making or breaking it. It's not the big things. Big things are really easy. It's like really easy. Like, I got to make a decision on this. It's all the little things that you don't quite notice. And maybe in business or whatever, it like might be bothersome, or it might be a little bit annoying, but you never address it. It could be in part of a process of like getting something from point A to point B, whatever it is. But it's all the little things. And then eventually, when they all come to a boil, right? Either the whole thing burns down or you're just now stuck in a very high state of stress. I understand that. And it really wears on your health and wears on your body and your mental health. And I mean, all the things in your life. But it's always the little things, like the nuances and the stuff that don't seem important to handle right now, or you try to be bigger than them. But you have to pay attention to the little things. They matter way more than the big things.
Yeah. Why the slaughterhouse? What, so the moment you thought, okay, this is what I need to do, what kind of space were you in? What was happening that had you think this is where I need to put my time and my talents? And let me just say this too. I'm going to drop this up here real quick. This is an aerial view of the Utah beef producers, the plant that Henry and his team built. It's a good sized plant. I mean, this took a lot of work, and I was blown away with how fast and how small of a crew you'd had to do this. I mean, the amount of work your guys got done every single day was just mind blowing. And I'm sure even today it's carrying forward in the processing side. which speaks to leadership. But what had you decide this? I mean, we all saw the challenges, but why this? And why did this scale? What was that like for you in that moment where you're like, I'm going to go for this? And what was some of the journey to get there?
Well, I mean, to start with, why at this scale? I mean, if in the farm and ranch community, if you have 2 or 3 animals that go get harvested, you could probably figure that out. You could probably wait the 6 months, or just, you could pull a favor, you could get it figured out. But the reality of it is, in agriculture in Utah, there is no large scale facility to be able to process animals. And so literally thousands of animals leave the state every year to be processed somewhere else. And ag has always been an important industry for Utah. And that's a massive missing component, is the ability to get an animal slaughtered and then with the USDA bug on it, so that then it can go anywhere it needs to go. So there's been a huge missing, and there's, it's a big enough struggle that I can see why nobody in Utah for 50 years has built something like this, to this scale. It's a massive problem. I mean, they said build a plant. Well, who knew you had to bore an interstate freeway, install a mile of pipe to be able to connect onto the sewer. And then after that, before you can connect to the sewer, you've got to build a wastewater treatment plant, and you've got to have a waste plan. I mean, those 3 components are hard enough even without the plant. So it's been just a hell of a big lift, for sure.
Yeah. And the facility you bought, the building, the main building you guys are looking at that has the gray roof, that was existing. It was a beer distribution warehouse. And then you can see the white roof with the red barn color in the back. You guys had to add that on as the animal receiving facility. So you took an existing structure and adapted it for the use of processing beef.
That's right. Cut up the floors, installed walls, concrete, refrigeration, electrical, had to upgrade all of our utilities, put in a massive amount of electrical and transformers, upgrade the water. So it was a lot of upgrades, a lot of build out, and a lot of figuring out. And we got enough of it done to open in about 80 weeks. So that wouldn't have happened had I had to make every decision with the committee. Literally when new information came, I was able to switch gears and just go ahead and get started on whatever that new information was.
Which was amazing. I mean, there were times we'd be walking around and all of a sudden a whole wall is moved that day, 4 feet, 6 feet, because new information came. And because there wasn't that committee, you're like, nope, let's do it. I mean, the leadership behind making those decisions that were going to be pretty permanent, and the confidence you had to do that, where does that come from? Like, what were you doing before building the slaughterhouse? Obviously you were in construction, but tell us about that too.
Well, so I've had a window and door business for 25 years, and then added on to that concrete business and construction. So where we do commercial concrete and excavation, and then some general contracting. So also during the heyday for solar, we had a solar business, and all during that time, always had a love for ranching, and God put enough cows into my space that I needed more land, and then put more land in my space and needed more cows. And so that took me on I really feel like God put those things in my life for me to be able to see the pinch points that the rancher sees, because I'm not some 5th generation, farmer. So we grew up on a small farm, had a wide variety of animals, but we did not have, a lot of cows. So I've had a love of that and grown that over the years to the point where I can see the pinch points that the rancher and the dairyman are in right now in Utah.
Yeah. What's been the experience now that you're around for these producers? What have you been hearing from them? Like, tell us about the blessing that Utah beef producers has become for that region.
Well, I'll tell you, I had the president of the Dairymen's Association come to me, and he said, I wanted to just come in person and tell you how much this means to all of us. like this means so much to all of us.
Mm.
And he's representing, he's representing hundreds of families in Utah. So literally what we said was about turning around cattle that have had to leave the state of Utah to get processed elsewhere. They're staying here, and they're actually being contracted and sold back to Utah people. So even though, we are reaching out through shipment and whatever, there's a lot of our product that's going to Utah.
Yeah. So you're helping to regionalize the Utah food supply chain. I mean, you and I had many conversations about the volume that could be done there to feed Utah if it was necessary for Utah to just feed Utah. And even with the capacity you have is still only scratching the surface, which is important for people to know that one, these things that are being done by you and others are absolutely necessary. We have centralized so much that that's the risk that we're in. So decentralizing is the only way. But it's like a chicken and egg. You have all these guys like yourself putting all this energy and effort in, hoping the consumer's going to see it and follow suit. And so that's the challenge, right? You've put all this effort in, but now to try and reach the population of Utah so they know that you're there, they can start supporting the plant. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, and people need to understand too that this is certainly not all about Utah beef producers, and it's not all about me. I mean, the reality of it is, there are other small producers, and all across America, we need to get behind and help and support those people. And we can do that by voting with our dollars and spending our money in those places. So, we have the capacity to do quite a bit. And as we scale to the scale that I built the plant, as we scale to be able to fulfill that potential, it's amazing what we can do, because we have the propensity to be a really big player in this region. But I want to just emphasize that it's not just about us. So if you have a local meat shop in your area, you need to do what you can to support them, and buy local and buy from the smaller guys and be able to support them with your dollars.
Yeah. Yeah. If you guys are just joining us, I want to remind you that you can type questions and we'll be able to have Henry answer those if you have any questions for him specifically. Henry Barlow is the founder and builder of Utah Beef Producers based in Richfield, Utah. I had the pleasure of working with him for a few months, so I got to know the operation intimately. I know that the picture you're seeing right now is Henry's favorite spot in the whole operation. It's right there where the cattle lead up to the chute, and it's a beautiful spot to stand and show people what the whole process looks like. So we've got Henry Barlow here, builder of Utah Beef Producers. It's a processing facility for beef in Richfield, Utah. So if you have any questions, ask them. Henry, let's move into, I want to know more about what you guys are working on. What are you excited about that's happening at Utah Beef Producers? You guys have lots of different offers because of the facility size. I mean, everything from not just the processing of beef, but the sale of beef direct, but also into some education components. So what are some of the things you guys have going on at Utah Beef Producers?
Well, so we're excited about, as we get some final things dialed in, we're excited to not only be able to serve more ranchers and farmers and dairymen, but we're excited that from Richfield, our shipping lanes are so good that we can literally hit a quarter of the meat eaters of America generally within 2-day ground. So we want to kind of light a fire under people to know where their food's coming from, and we can fulfill to quite a big region because we're right on an interstate. We're right a quarter of the meat eaters of America, right?
Mm-hmm.
within reach of the plant. And of course, we've even shipped back east, and we'll ship air freight for somebody if they want. And we actually have had that way more than you would think. I would have not expected that people from Jersey and Connecticut are like, no, ship it to us. And interesting, a couple of weeks ago, we had a guy from Texas route his trip to make sure that he came by the plant. Been following us since we started building it, and he wanted to come and buy meat, left with about $1,000 worth of beef. So
That's
thank you,
awesome.
Texas.
So you've got your direct to consumer stuff, which is what we're showing here, boxed beef, or a box of beef anyway, assorted, different assortments. You can find these on utahbeefproducers.com, or you can find them on From the Farm. They've got different products in different areas, but this is the box beef program. And then just to kind of educate the consumers listening now, what does it look like when you don't sell it direct to consumer? What's the life cycle of, let's say you're working directly with a producer, you're helping them move their cattle when they're time to be processed. What does it look like on the other side for an operation like yours? What's that downstream life cycle of that beef?
Well, so if I understand your question, there's a large part of the products that go through the plant that go at a wholesale level. Okay. So they will in turn go to somebody who then supplies restaurants, or maybe they supply a grind contract. And then also we help some of the ranchers to, if they'll do it on enough scale, we will be able to white label and even ship for them. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, that's not something that we can do if somebody doesn't have volume, because it's a really, really cumbersome process to be able to facilitate that correctly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're managing SKUs. You really have to become a partner to serve them on the fulfillment side to that level. It makes sense.
Well,
Yeah.
And sometimes people don't realize that there's like 5 or 6 different levels of beef. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have been knocking it out of the park. I mean, we've gotten feedback on some of our Wagyu, like this is the best I've ever had. But the reality of it is the masses are not going to be able to afford Wagyu cattle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I've told my staff, we need to be able to not only have the Wagyu class, the prime and the choice class, we need to have a lower class, a select, so that we can feed the masses. Because the reality of it is what's coming in this nation. I mean, that's going to become a really important thing. And right now, people are coming off of years of having a lot of disposable income. And I suggest that going forward, it's not going to be that easy. So we need to be poised and ready. So if you think about all the different SKUs and then have that in a select, a choice, a prime, a Wagyu line, and then even one more. So my own cattle. So there's some people that don't want any vaccinations. They don't want any shots, no hormones, no nothing. Grass fed, grass finished. Now, a lot of people that's the buzzword.
Yeah.
But the reality of it is you're not going to get out of a grass finished animal. You're not going to get that same fat and that same flavor.
Yep.
But there is another reality too. And there's people that have gut health problems that are realizing the importance of exactly eating that. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They need a leaner finished animal. So that's 6 verticals. And within those 6 verticals, you've got to have all those SKUs. And then you take and put multiple labels on that, like Utah beef and then others.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's tough because you can't label it after it's frozen. The labels aren't going to stick.
Right.
So you've got to make a commitment, and that means inventory. And that's one of the hardest things about this business is cash flow.
Yeah.
I mean, people don't realize it, but in the 26 weeks we're brand new. We're 26 weeks old, and yet the millions of dollars of money it takes in cash flow to be able to cash flow this thing.
Yeah.
It's rough. And
then the amount of storage capacity for that many SKUs to have all those different labels, like you just don't have the space for. I mean, it's a lot it eats up space real quick.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is why, it's the reason the big guys are big is because they found ways to maximize efficiency for their vertical operation, because the consumers are used to buying all the options, right? We've lived in a time of comfort and complacency for so long because we could have whatever we wanted at the snap of our fingers through our phone and have it on our doorstep within hours. And if we want a stable system, you can't build one. I mean, we're seeing the results of what that looks like. So consumers, need to kind of consider what does it look like to live more sustainably in their own. And I use that word very loosely. You can plug that in with your own, hopefully positive notation of what sustainable means. But
I wish you and Brooke would come up with a new word.
yeah, I know.
It's not us. We also aren't in charge of the greenwashing and the
Yeah,
Exactly.
the trendiness of that word.
yeah.
I think I'm just was peeking on the comments on here, and I get the feeling, and it's not only because of what people say. I mean, I sense it around when I'm out in community and when the conversation comes up about food supply and where we are and what it looks like. It's always, I guess what I want to say is I urge everyone listening, I think we're so conditioned in our country, especially at this point, to there always be something happening, right? It's like there's always something that we're on the cusp of, and it sounds like everything's going to be over after this, and it's I think it's part of the whole operation of trying to keep people in fear, because then we don't pay attention to things, we don't actually act on things that we can make a difference on. This is not, I don't think that when it comes to food supply and trying to prepare yourself, like what Henry was saying with, try and pay attention to those things, because we've come from a surplus of kind of, just having like expendable money, just like cash flow and being able to pay for that and get that. And we really are towing the line of things getting bad really, really fast. And we all hope that it's not the worst case scenario. We all hope that actually it ends up being better than what data and information is telling us that it's going to be in our coming future, very near future. But the reality is you don't want to play with your food supply, because in a way you still feel like, this has happened before. It's, fake news, we'll be fine. Like all they're doing is because there's the presidential election. They're just trying to say this and say this and say this. And, I've heard so many times the conversation of like, historically this happened and everyone thought the whole world was going to end back, and then it didn't. I just feel like everyone should err on the side of caution, because not only if you err on the side of caution when it comes to knowing your producer, don't go to the grocery store, vote with your dollar, save our ranchers and farmers, because even if things end up, start looking up a little bit and not continuing to look sort of down, the fight for our producers and for small family farms, it's not going away, because money and power will always be what people want, and they will continue to dwindle us away until all you have the option of is going to the grocery store. And then to have even if it's to implement a shortage or something happens, like train derailments, or people go on strike, and now all of a sudden your store shelves are pretty empty for a while. Like maybe they'll fill back up, but depending on what level of income you have, what your life is like, you may not have the ability to survive or feed yourself and your family for a couple of weeks until they finally get some food into your area. I mean, it is never a bad idea to be self-sufficient. It is never a bad idea to know your neighbors. It is never a bad idea to take care of your neighbors, especially the ones that can guarantee you healthy food that that you can trust, that is not going to be secretly putting toxins into your body without you knowing. It's going to continue to make you sick. And then your fight for good health becomes harder and harder and harder, and takes more money and more money and more money. I really, really urge anyone who's listening to this and watching this, this is important. And we're doing this not selfishly. It's because we genuinely, really want to make a difference for our farmers and our producers, but for our country, for our families, for future generations of our families. And we spend a lot of time reading and talking to people and researching, not just what's happening today, but all the stuff that's happened in the past. historically, because we can learn from the past. We would be so stupid to have the mindset that like, well, life's way better. Like that was like 100 years ago. Like we don't live like that anymore. That would never happen. And it's like, oh, well, no. It repeats.
Yeah.
You know, the history repeats itself. So be prepared. So if you're in Utah, if you are in Utah, you got to get behind like places like Utah beef producers. You got to get behind your local farmers and ranchers. If you, this is the first time you're hearing about this, and maybe you have a local producer that it's like your neighbor, or maybe it's a cousin or whatever that produces a decent amount and sells to people in your area, get them involved. Get them connected, because what we're trying to do, and Henry's trying to do, it's creating a community of people that all have the same values and the same desires for a much healthier future for our country, but just being able to have the right to have food sovereignty. You know, it's an enjoyable practice to grow your own food, to steward your own land. It is such an enjoyable process, and it's hard work. And it's not for everybody, but everybody wants and deserves a healthy, clean product that is nutrient dense, that is aiding in your health, and then downstream in your health.
Yeah.
That's a good point, Brooke. Earlier this week, Thursday night, the Farm Bureau annual meeting shared with us some stats. And of course, the three of us know that across America, only 1.5% of the population is an ag contributor to help feed the people. In our state, it's actually 3%. So it's double in the state of Utah. But consider all of you listening that the people in the farm and ranch community, they almost look at it as a calling, like what Brooke was saying. They look at it as a calling to do what we do. I mean, I certainly didn't need the experience. I feel like it's what God called me to do this plant. I have enough business experience and enough stewardship. I didn't do it for that reason. I did it because I felt like it was what needed to be done. And I think that people in the farm and ranch community, they look at it as a calling. Most of the people in that community, they spend 16 hours a day, and they wrap up their day by wondering how they could find 3 more hours to finish the chores. It's a big deal. So
yeah,
having a gratitude and appreciation for the growers and the producers and the farmers, the ranchers, the dairymen. I mean, it starts with gratitude. And then like Brooke was saying, vote with your dollars and spend it there.
Yeah.
Well, and just one reminder too, because if you don't have a direct connection to agriculture or the lifestyle, maybe you always grew up in the city, maybe your family was never tied to that, and that's extremely understandable. But I'm just going to state the obvious that we all know, but I think some people think about more than others. This country was built from people who walked to an area, started from nothing. And I mean, clearly this is something that is like one of the most driving forces for me, that like I am like deeply rooted in my family heritage, and my family, my ancestors, that's what we did. AJ, same thing. Southern Utah, nothing. Families had to work together. You had to work the land. You had to be building, buildings and roads and bringing in, things like electricity and power and internet and radio. I mean, our culture did not just start this way. You had to have hardworking, community-driven, God-fearing, but people that were never going to give up. And it was a calling for them. It was build this for you and for your generations to come. And to do that and to build something that is lasting and lifelong and continues to grow and be a beautiful place, you have to have that love. You have to have, that calling in the first place. And it's kind of funny that we're back. I feel like we're back to that point, and it's our responsibility to get back to that and fix what has gone wrong and get us back on track. And it's going to take some time. But again, no one person, no one group, no one company can do it. Yeah. It is the people. There's way more of the people, patriots and Americans, than there are the people up at the top that are just making rules, and usually it's self-serving.
Yeah.
10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
So, unless you're Thomas Massey.
Yeah.
Maybe a few others, but I'm a huge fan of him. So
yeah. Got a couple of questions for you, Henry. When you started your first business to get to your next business, what was the best route to take into two businesses? I think they're asking, how did you go from Rocky Mountain Concrete into the beef, and what allowed you to make that transition, which I think is a really great story about your family. So talk about your boys, what they've been doing. I mean, judge them by their fruits. And if we're talking about children, man, I met your family and they're incredible people, all of them. So tell me, to share to this comment, how did you go from Rocky Mountain Concrete into Utah Beef Producers, and what's happening with both? How does that run?
Well, so that has been a powerful story to watch my family step up at the same time I stepped up, because the reality of it is I have a great big stewardship in Utah County with businesses and ranch and animals and family. And I mean, it's a big stewardship here. And for me to be gone, there's a lot of people that had to step up. So the family had to step up to take care of things that I was usually quarterbacking at home. They had to step up there. And my sons in the business, it's amazing how they have stepped up. And, I'm still involved some, but by and large, they have really taken the bull by the horns and are doing a fantastic job. I mean, this whole experience is growing up a lot of people in my family. I mean, it's in a big, big way.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You look at those old videos and pictures of men doing work, and you realize the men you're looking at are 20-year-olds, 20-somethings. And it's not like that anymore, but yet your boys are in their 20s and they're running and operating this incredible company that is delivering on their commitments, right? One of my favorite quotes from you, because I use it a lot now, and unfortunately, people promise in marriage and courtship what they don't deliver in marriage. And so, but you've got these boys that are doing that. They're following through with their commitments to their customers, and they're in their 20s running this incredible company. I mean, I thought that was important to share the age, because again, I mean, even speaking for myself, I was well into my 30s before I pulled my head out and realized where I was going. So I'm impressed by your boys. I had spending time with them, and just I say boys, the young men that you have there operating.
I got to tell you a funny story. I was asked to be a keynote speaker and down in Sevier County when all of the ag teachers for the state of Utah assembled for their annual convention. And I was asked to be a speaker there. And one of the things that I do, because most of the time speakers at a convention, if they are a teacher or a professor, they can't give the glory to God, but I always do. And I've had a friend that's a professor at a local college that said to me, he said, "I'm so glad how you deliver your message and you give the glory to God, because they would roast us if we did that." but I really don't care about that. But I was telling this group of about 200 teachers this day, I said, when my son wanted to join the Marines at 17 years old, had a chip on his shoulder, on both shoulders, about the amount of responsibility we have because of agriculture and animals and just the lifestyle that we live. I mean, he wanted to go play football and, just not have anything amount to his day after day, like a lot of his friends in high school. And so he kind of had a chip on both shoulders. And so he wanted to join the Marines at 17. And I said, no, son, when you're 18, you can make your own decision. But until then, anyway, so I remember the words that I said to him the day that he left to go in. He joined on his 18th birthday. He signed up for the Marines, and it was a 6-year stint. But I said, son, you don't even realize how many seeds have been planted in you for 18 years, but you will someday. And you can imagine the pride of the phone call 6 months in when he called me and says, Dad, you got a minute? Can I talk to you? And I said, sure. He says, I just want you to know that I want to do it just like you did it. Because as a young man going into the Marines, it was easy for him to become squad leader, okay? And then graduating boot camp, he became guide. So at 19 years old, had 400 men reporting to him. And he could see, with that amount of men, he could see the ones that were agricultural based foundation, the advantage that they had in their work ethic. Okay. And so he saw that, and that's what triggered him to make that phone call. So I tell the story, we get all done, and several of the teachers came up. 2 of the teachers came up and said, what's your last name? And I said, Barlow. And they said, you wouldn't be Levi's dad, would you? They were his teachers. And so they saw that 17-year-old kid with the chip on both shoulders from their point of view. So they really got a kick out of that story. But the reality of it is, and I think one of you guys mentioned this, I mean, those of us in ag, we're doing it because we're not just raising cows. We're raising our families, and we're raising ourselves through our animals and through providing and giving back to the community and building and growing things. So that's our message.
Awesome.
One of the funniest things my dad said to me, it was my nephew was graduating high school. And we were driving up to the ranch, and my dad was letting me know what he did the day after he graduated high school, just to give me an example of what it was, just the difference in life, right? So my dad ran a feed mill, and he owned and ran a feed mill. But before that, my grandpa did. So my dad's in high school. He graduated high school. My grandpa left to go gold panning. And when he'd go, he said he'd be gone. You didn't know when he was coming back. He came back when he found stuff and he wanted to come back. And so he was going gold panning, and he told my dad, you're in charge. He did not, he was in high school. He just graduated high school. There were so many things he did not know how to do, big pieces of equipment. And if things went wrong, they were hauling stuff and dropping stuff off and driving things. They were also hauling to California from Southern Utah. And he had to, it was the ultimate trial by fire. And he said, can you imagine, my nephew, he's like, can you imagine him doing that right now? And I go, no way, dude. No way. It really takes a certain kind of person that's been taught certain things through hard work and through trial and through a little bit of pain and, rough conversations with your dad that can do that can sort of not freak out. And my grandpa clearly felt confident enough in what he had instilled in my dad that he had no problem leaving. And all he did was you're in charge, figure it out. My dad said, I could have, used just a little help before he left. But it's crazy. And, when I hear stories like that, it motivates me to do more with hard work in agriculture, because I want to be somebody who can do that. I want to develop my nieces and nephews or the next generations to grow up and be someone like that, and not be someone who doesn't want to take action or is too hesitant to hard work, right? Or looking for an easier, better option. You have to this is a lifestyle that you have to love. You have to love hard work, but it really pays in so many more ways than you would ever imagine. And to correlate that to like fitness, for some of my fitness people, after I had surgery, spent a lot of time not being able to train, took a period of time off. I was cycling a lot, and I was cycling and not doing anything else. I wasn't really lifting. I was, dealing with own personal things, and I was cycling, road cycling, but I was in California, and I loved to climb. So it was lots of elevation climb, going on like 20+ mile rides, but just digging in and working hard. But I wasn't running. I wasn't really training. And this is before I decided that I was going to accept an invitation. It was for it was 2018 maybe, or 2019. It was a big competition they were going to do out of all of California, and the past champions of the California Regional were invited. So if you wanted to compete at this, we were asked to come and compete. And I decided I was going to do it. And I was terrified because I was not training. I was doing, athletic things that were not in a gym, because I'd spent so much of my life in a gym and so much of my training in a gym. So I was outside, I was riding my bike. Well, I had to go and do a timed mile. And I hadn't been running in a very, very long time. And so I'm thinking it's gonna be horrible. I think my fastest mile time before this was like barely sub 7 minutes, maybe. Probably a little bit faster than that, but we're just gonna say for the sake of the story, barely sub 7 minutes. Well, I went to this track. It was a dirt track. Started my run. Hadn't been running, because it was like, do your PR time, and now we work to increase it. It's you're setting that number so we can beat it, and we can train to make it faster. And I completely surprised myself. I haven't been running at all, but I'd only been cycling. So something else that I was doing that was hard work, and it had nothing to do with running a mile, running a timed mile. Yeah, I ran my fastest mile time at sub 6:30. I wasn't training for it, wasn't planning on it. I was focused on something completely different, a full different modality of training, yet it crosses over. Certain things cross over. Certain things you can focus on and work on, whether it's in a form of your character. I mean, definitely if it's in a form of your character, that 100% crosses over to every experience you're going to have in your life and every relationship you're going to have in your life. So not that anyone needed that correlation, but now you have it. And you also know that after not running for a long time, road cycling with major elevation increases on a bike will transfer over to increasing or decreasing your mile time.
I was going to say, especially with the hill climbs, that's my least favorite part.
We won't talk about my mile time. I also want to just say this. A lot of times I talk about my boys because they're in the business, but the reality of it is to my girls of how they have stepped up. My son Taylor also, when Levi was gone for 6 years to the Marines, stay the course and stay right in the game. And at a very, very young age, so impressive to see his discipline and accomplishments and, leading teams of men when he was 20. It's just really impressive, running big commercial jobs, experience way beyond his years, and how my girls have continued to step up at home. And I just appreciate the whole family. And certainly, Ed and JJ there at the plant, as you watch them, AJ, it was Ed, JJ, myself, and always a little band of rebels building that thing out. So fantastic to have good people around.
And they worked the hours of producers. Your guys didn't stop. It was awesome. It was really cool to see. Here's a question from somebody: small farm, Northeast Ohio, plus minus 30 head, 300 acres, sell to locals out of the garage and ship to my home in California for personal consumption. How would you recommend expanding a bit in the areas of processing? So he's a small operation. This a big problem nationwide, this processing, which is why the blessing that you brought to Utah. And that was the thing, when we first on this journey, I knew Utah needed a slaughterhouse. I was selling beef direct to consumer and couldn't get in, but I didn't have nearly the amount of skill sets necessary because we looked into building one. And after working with you, I'm like, well, I'm glad that this guy took it on. He's prepared for this. I would have never been, but Utah needed that. Right. And so this is an issue nationwide. This is a problem facing most producers. Have you had any conversations with people outside of Utah or other places that are asking you, like, what would you do in those situations? How would you look to expand your ability to process? Would you recommend them building their processing facility, partner with people? Any thoughts you have on that, Henry?
Well, I did have, I had a gentleman drive down from North Dakota without an appointment in the hopes of getting some time with me. And I actually took time with him and went and spent a couple hours with him. He wants to do the same thing in North Dakota. But so 30 head, lives in California, selling it in California or back at the farm. I don't know, but and how to expand that. I guess the couple of questions would be are you looking to expand like your head count? Do you have a customer base for more? Can you raise more cattle? Because we could probably help facilitate, the slaughter of those animals and then getting them to you if you had a network that you could get those out into. So that's one. Number two is, if you live in California, did I hear that right, AJ? He lives in California?
His ranch is in Ohio, but he lives in California.
Yeah. So there's certainly a massive need in California. So if you have a way to distribute your own beef, I mean, what a perfect setting, because there is a lot of people in California, I think, that would like really good, trusted beef, a good source like yours. So I think that you have the propensity to, with just a little bit of effort, right in your own, wherever that area is in California, to be able to distribute that on a retail level and sell that direct. So you just need to get, your packaging figured out.
Yeah. Would you recommend, I mean, you took on a really big lift with the size of operation. Do you think guys should be looking into processing facilities of their own if they're in remote locations that don't have them? How would you, from your experience now, maybe I think your lessons learned and maybe even some warnings would be as valuable as anything else. Not as a way to not do it, but just to be on the lookout for it.
Well, it's going to be a lot harder than you think. Mm-hmm. Like, I've done some really hard things in my life, and this is the hardest thing I've ever done. There is so many needles to thread and all at the same time. And the amount of money it takes and cash flow, and just it's unthinkable, the amount of processes and systems and things to figure out. So I would think twice about that before you go and do that on your own, unless you could have a coalition of people to be able to support you in that. Certainly with that kind of a head count, you're not going to produce, you're not going to want to go do that unless you're producing a lot more, because the juice is not worth the squeeze.
Yeah. One thing I've seen is small groups of producers getting together, and then together they go and build an operation. Yeah. So that it's not one man trying to keep it floating. It's a group of people floating it for their own customer base. I've seen that happening, and it's probably, I would say, probably far less stressful than what you've gone to do on your own with this size of facility. Are you?
Yeah. It's a two-edged sword, though, on that, AJ. Also, yep. I mean, it's not like any time you have too many cooks in the kitchen, sometimes you have a hard time getting to the decision.
Yeah.
And so that in and of itself can sometimes hijack a business or a mission. So it's certainly a two-edged sword, but there is strength in numbers. And if you can be united on the same mission and the same journey, why, it's good to have.
Yeah.
So it's like there are good partnerships.
Yeah.
And there are bad partnerships.
Right.
And so I think it's just having the right people on board. I mean, I went through some pretty, some of the things that I actually won't say on this podcast right now, AJ, in your firsthand, some of the hard trials that I went through. And the reality of it is, for me, I had to get to the point that I was making a decision to go it alone, because I don't want some more immoral characters in my space, not for love or money.
Yeah.
So I think that's the bookends, that I tried to get, live within.
Yeah. And without going into detail, I remember that was a big growth moment for you, because that's about when I came on. And so now it's about it was learning how to trust people again, and how to filter out and find the right people. And because it can cause a lot of problems. And I have heard of a lot of co-ops that don't make it because they didn't have clear communication in the beginning. They didn't have one chief that was leading, and everybody else says, okay, you drive and we'll sit in the right seats on the bus. Where do you need us? If everybody's trying to be the chief. I mean, like you said earlier, and what was so awesome about being part of that build towards the end was how fast you could make changes, because it didn't have to go by committee. And so you just were able to do what you knew was right for the business. So, another question is, how did we do all this meat stuff throughout history? That's a good question.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, people have no idea, but 20 years ago, there's 10,000 slaughterhouses. Today, there's 2,500. I mean, do the math, people.
Yep.
Yeah. AJ, you can speak to that way better than I can, but.
Yeah, that's the answer. In the past, it, like Brooke was saying before, it was a community that served each other. It was built by and for the community and the community's needs. And the needs were different from geographical location to geographical location. I mean, you weren't eating avocados in Wyoming in the winter, but you had what you needed, and that's how you lived. I was thinking about this the other day. My grandma would always tell me, she died at 96. And so lived through the Great Depression. Grandpa deployed to the war 2 weeks after they were married, gone for 2 years. Like, she had that kind of life, and she would say life was so difficult growing up. But what's profound to think about is they scaled into what we have. For us, imagine going in reverse. Like, they had the knowledge on how to preserve food. They had the knowledge on what the local foods were that would grow there in the right timing and when to grow it. And all of that was household common knowledge. Household, meaning everybody knew it, whether they grew it or not. They just knew what to do. And we live in a time where the majority of people, probably 90% of people, have no clue how to preserve food, how to forage for local, food wherever it is. I was on a tour with the NRCS up here in Wyoming, and they were talking about the different forages. And there was I think it's Indian wheatgrass. I can't remember for sure, because that's not my strength. But they said this was what the natives ate, and it's all around. But we would look at that and think it's a weed and have no clue how to process this natural growing grass into food. And so we would literally have people around us starving just because they don't know what's around them or what's under their own feet. But grandma didn't have to worry about it. Her life increasingly got better. If we have a major catastrophe similar to COVID, doesn't even have to be worse than that. It's just similar to COVID, because we haven't recovered from what COVID did. People are going to have a hard time making it, and they just don't, because they don't remember those old ways.
Look at North Carolina right now. If anyone's paying attention and following that, and not in the news, okay, from the people that are there, boots on the ground, people are starving.
Yeah.
They don't have supplies. Yeah. They don't have food. They're still finding people. Yep. I mean, it's, I was talking to my friend Gina about it, because it's like, man, it's really crazy. Like, it's like, I understand this, but to be living in a moment when you can actually be experiencing how easy it is to mess with what people know and what they don't know. Like, I feel like as a country, as people, it's very, it's safe to assume we all really care about what is happening there, what has been, what's taken place, and what they're trying to work through. And I'm loving all of the people who are going there to help. But then you learn about how people are being turned away. Elon Musk couldn't even get in there to try and bring in them Wi-Fi. Like there's so many things that you'll never know. And then it's so easy because we constantly live in this, we live in a consuming culture and we're swiping and that's not interesting. That's not interesting. Oh man, that's interesting. Not anymore. I don't want to watch that. I want to watch that. It's like we're constantly searching for something that we want to have our attention. And it's so easy to change it to something else. They're still dying and suffering there right now.
Mm-hmm.
Fires are still going. People are losing land that they'll probably never get back. I mean, there's these life-altering, like huge life-altering events that are happening today. But yet, unless you're paying attention to it, and you really have to want to be invested to know what's going on, because it's so easy to miss it if you're getting your information either from the TV or just on your phone, you would almost just be like, your life's great. Well, I don't know what you guys are talking about. Life's great. It's like, no. Yes, it is. We should all have a positive outlook, but really bad things are happening over here, and that's going to have ramifications, and that's going to the downstream of that for communities there, just like in Georgia, the downstream of food supply to the damage that has happened to farms and ranches out there. I mean, I saw that there was I think I could get this number wrong, 32,000 acre pecan farm decimated.
Gone. Yep.
What does that mean for a lot of things in our food supply chain? Pecans go in a lot of things, not just people that buy a bag of pecans to eat. Pecans go in things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you think about the livelihood of all the people that ran a 32,000 acre pecan farm and what that will do to them and their ability to provide, and literally survive. Like, it's so much more of an issue than a lot of people. I won't assume the worst of anybody. I just think that people need to pay a little bit more attention and don't let these big, like these things that are life altering, culture altering, don't let them just be in your mind or pay attention to them for a second. And then all of a sudden it's like squirrel, right? Oh, attention over here. Life's great over here. I'm going to choose not to pay attention to all that other stuff because it will downstream affect everybody, everything to do with food, unless you're okay with, just the industrialization of our food that's killing our health and has been for a very long time, and having a few people be in charge of deciding what we can and cannot eat. And you can go to the grocery store and find it, or you can't find it. And if they want us to eat bugs, you're going to eat bugs. You're going to put this and that, because now you've lost either maybe they don't take away the right to grow your own food, but maybe they just make it so impossible that you actually can't. You can't afford it, or your land is gone. Or now you barely even have enough space. You don't even have a house of your own because now we're all in apartments because we're not going to own anything, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It can just end up being so much worse than anyone can even imagine. And this is not something that I think is worth playing with the idea of like, oh, that's a conspiracy.
Yeah. Well,
no, it's just better to err on the side of like pay attention to what's happening to our neighbors, pay attention to what's happening to your community. And then instead of just sitting back and waiting for someone else to do it, you may not actively be able to do something. Like I can't actively load up and drive to North Carolina and help out, but I can either vote with my dollars. I can donate to certain groups that are doing that do have the trucks, they do have the ability to do it. Or if it's for ranching and farming, if it's supporting your local butcher shop, keep them in business, go there. Just pay attention to how you are fitting into the puzzle of this whole thing and make sure it's for a positive outcome and not a selfish outcome because it's the most convenient for you.
Right.
Well, whatever it is that we're up to, I think if we get people to just turn up their intensity, I mean, think if we could just get people to turn up their intensity just 20%, think of the force for good that we could be all across America. So whatever circles you're running in and whatever causes that are good that you're up to, if we could just amp up and turn up our intensity just 20%, think of the force for good.
And like 5% of that is voting this year. So I'm just going to do this plug for a reminder that you have to take part in creating the future that you want. We all do.
Yep.
I think I can speak for myself because I never truly I also don't want to, growing up, I never really knew how important it was when I was younger, like before I even could vote.
Yeah.
So even when I turned 18, it wasn't important to me, especially because all I heard is more so like or maybe I even just kind of had the mindset that like, I'm one person.
Yeah.
Like I'm one person, there's millions of people, like minus one vote, it's still going to end up where it's going to end up. But even if that's how you feel today, and I'm also not going to say that there's no validity to that, right? Because I don't know the ins and outs. I'm not in there counting votes. I'm not, a part of the process, but every one of us are a part of the process. And if we have this one thing that we can do as citizens of this country to be a part in creating the future that's better for future generations and for our current lifestyle, if that's what we can do, then we need to do it. If there's the one thing we can do, we can vote.
Yep.
Let's do it. So if you are thinking, I don't want to vote, don't do it for yourself. Do it for your kids. Do it for your neighbors. Do it for your future kids. Do it for your grandkids. Do it for, think about anyone but yourself.
Yeah.
And then decide to go vote.
Yeah, that makes me think about how I felt about COVID. And isn't it interesting now that we have the advantage of looking back? It was like we had the opportunity to decide where we would draw that line in the sand. And isn't it interesting how the ones that chose not to wear a mask, you would feel like you had a new best friend that you'd never met when you walk into a store. You like had an instant camaraderie. And now we have the advantage of seeing how detrimental the mask was for health reasons across America.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did we learn from that experience? One of the things that we should have learned from that experience is the loudmouth left wants you to think that you are a minority.
Yep.
So whether you're talking about voting, Brooke, like what you brought up, or whether you're talking about turning up your intensity or standing up a little bit louder and stronger for what you believe in, I mean, it matters. And so the reality of it is across America, there's way more good people than knuckleheads. It's just that the knuckleheads have been the only one talking.
Yep.
So we have got to up our game.
Yeah, 100%. I have noticed there's way less talk of the silent majority because the silent majority is not so silent anymore and we need it. So want to get a couple more questions back on the slaughterhouse and we'll wrap up, Henry. So Brian asked, how many employees does your plant take to run? So are you at capacity with employees? Are you looking for employees? I mean, this was another miracle coming from Cody, Wyoming, same population that you have in Richfield. We had a really hard time finding employees here, but man, those miracles were just rolling through those front doors. So how's that look right now for you guys?
So no, we are not running at capacity. We've had to throttle the plant a little bit until we get the rest of our obstacles overcome. Mm-hmm. So we've got around 25, 30 people, maybe 31 people employed right now. And we look to grow, and we can grow. It's a big lift for the cash flow that is involved in a plant like this. So a really big lift. But
so increasing sales direct to consumer, increasing sales wholesale, all of the above. What is that? What helps Utah beef producers get there?
It helps increasing sales direct to the consumer for sure.
Yeah.
Because the reality of it is it gives us more throughput. Yeah. And we built a machine. Yeah. And in order for the machine to someday operate in the black, we've got to get the machine more throughput. Okay.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. And I've said this many times. We did a show a couple of weeks ago that was all about processing facilities. I think it was last week. And a processing facility cannot make enough revenue just processing for other customers. In other words, another white label that's buying wholesale or just doing processing for another rancher. A processing facility needs to have a retail value somewhere in its operation. It could be byproducts, it could be jerkies or snack sticks or tallows, or it could be partnering with ranchers that don't want to deal with all the logistics of customer service and, you know, shipping and all of that kind of stuff. So you partner with them, label it Utah beef, so that you've got a partnership there where it goes out the door. So having some value in the retail is absolutely necessary for these processing facilities to pencil out.
Yep. And there's one other thing I'd like to speak to here quickly, and that is that, you know, I started out on this journey to be able to solve problems for the rancher. And so even though sometimes it might feel like to some of the staff that it's, you know, it's harder to do a custom slaughter fee for service, I am hell bent on the fact that we have to be able to make that successful. So this is an ask and an invitation for any of you producers that need custom slaughter. We would love the opportunity to process your animal for you, because one of the things that I need to have the right blend of direct to consumer, wholesale, and custom fee for service. One of the advantages to fee for service is that I'm not buying those cattle.
Yes.
So that helps our cash flow. Okay?
Yeah.
That's putting our labor and our equipment in the plant to work without me having to go out and buy those cattle. So this is an invitation for you guys to call and schedule your appointment, and we would love to process your beef for you. We only do beef, so no other animal products in, no wild game, no pork, no goats, no sheep.
Yep.
So
do you do they need to have a minimum order? What does that look like for you guys on that side? A minimum, not a minimum order, but number of head of cattle?
No.
Okay.
No.
Great. Perfect.
Yeah, we can process whatever they've got.
And let me speak to that too, just because I was with you in a lot of those conversations in the beginning, picking out what kind of equipment to use. And so I just want to say that if you are somebody that Utah beef producers is within range, we put a lot of time and effort and energy into making sure that what you got back for your customers was incredible. They would be proud of the packaging. They would be proud of the labeling, more importantly, how it was cut. I mean, the staff that you have there, again, the miracles that came in, people that know what to do. So if you're looking for a place that knows how to process specifically for your goals of going direct, Utah Beef is set up for that. We put a lot of time and energy into that. So you can't go wrong by going there. Yeah. How would a person from different state get the cattle to your facility? It's a good question. So that would obviously be location relevant, but how would you say if they're out of the state, but you're within the distance they need to be, what's the best way for them to get it there?
Well, I mean, I believe that you should transport them on what's logical and that makes the most economic sense for you. We can receive a stock trailer at a time, or we can receive a semi at a time. So just call and schedule it. You can reach us on Utah Beef, UtahBeefProducers.com, or you could, find us on Instagram or YouTube or Twitter or TikTok or all of those. The plant phone number, maybe you could post this up.
Yeah.
AJ, for any of those scheduling, is 435-287-BEEF. So 435-287-2333, 287-BEEF.
I have a question, and I'm guessing this is for Henry, and I am not sure if I'm just going to ask it. Okay, not my question, but why do you only sell in package deals? Is there limited product?
Why do we only sell in package deals?
That's the question. I don't know.
Let's bring a little clarity to that. We showed the package options that they have here.
That's probably what she's referencing.
Maybe what they're looking for clarity on. Do you offer quarter, halves, and wholes? I know on the From the Farm website, you can buy in a la carte, so you can pick your steaks, your ground beef. So you can shop however it fits you. That's one of the benefits I truly see for you, Henry, is that a lot of times the smaller operations don't have the capacity to sell out a la carte. And what we're seeing on From the Farm is a lot of consumers still like the convenience of choosing what they want, not being forced to take a box of what you decide. So because of your size, you have that capacity. Smaller operations, it makes it really challenging to manage inventory. But because you have the relationships with wholesale buyers, you can probably move through the overages of ground beef when, it's not hard to sell steaks. Those always want to go, which is why a lot of the smaller producers that are only finishing a few head a year, they can't sell steaks only because they'll be left trying to find a home for hundreds, if not thousands of pounds of ground beef. But a facility like yours, you have the ability to offer those primal cuts only and then sell out your ground beef through your other channels.
Yeah. So you can order, Brooke, to answer your question, you can order exactly what you want, pick and choose. And you can also just get a box. In other words, we do sell quarter halves and wholes, but the reality of it is for the masses, they generally don't have 6 deep freezes like AJ in their garage.
True.
Or like us, we've got beef and it wasn't my question, Henry. I know what you do.
Yeah.
Been there.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm trying to just, every time someone new joins the live through my Instagram,
it throws
all
it
of
up.
Yes, but
Yeah.
I was going to just grab her name really quick. Oh, right here, Brandy. Brandy, there you go. Highly recommend just going to their, either check them out on From the Farm or go to the website for Utah beef producers. But a lot of people around like different holidays and things like that, they will consolidate and do packaged plans or a box that you can get. You're going to find that with any producer, but also they do offer where you can do a la carte and pick what you want and do things like that. So
we'd like to make it really simple too. If you've got somebody, a family member that lives somewhere, instead of sending them something else, let's send them some good beef and we'll ship it right to them. Yeah.
Christmas is coming up. Thanksgiving, replace those turkeys with prime rib roasts. I'm telling you, that'll be a bigger hit for more, I think. Now's the perfect time to try out what they have there, and especially with the holiday season.
And if you have room, if you don't currently have a deep freeze, if you have room where you live to get one, highly, highly, highly recommend getting one and doing something like invest in doing like a cow share. So investing in like getting a full beef or half beef or quarter beef. I personally think unless it's a space issue, never go quarter beef. You always go at least a half beef.
Yeah.
You're never going to be like, oh man, I have too much.
Yeah.
Well,
I have too much.
I think the three of us grew up with parents who looked at a freezer as important as a bank account.
Yeah.
I mean, all of us, we grew up and that was an insurance policy for my parents. They had meat in the freezer.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just really important all my growing up years. And that's remained extremely important to me as well.
Yeah, likewise. And on the quarter halves and wholes, some benefits of that is usually you can get it cheaper because it doesn't take as much management to manage smaller orders. So going in on a whole beef with 3-4 of your neighbors is a really great idea, and sharing that, splitting it up. You can split them up pretty evenly. I mean, you get like 20 to 24 steaks in an animal. You get, so you can portion it out pretty fairly if you guys all pitch in on that. And because a lot of people don't have the big giant freezers that we do to store that volume, but you need about, matter of fact, I might be able to throw this up here real quick, but for, it's different sizes for different freezer sizes, cubics, they call it cubic foot for different, pounds of beef. If I can find this real quick, maybe I can throw it up for you guys, but I have this chart that seems pretty helpful. I'm probably, here we go. I can do this. I thought I might promise you something I couldn't deliver on. So this is a nice little graph kind of showing what you would need for freezer size, right? So you've got if we're talking a half a beef, here's a quarter right here. So, you're talking, this is based on a 24 cubic foot freezer. So it's 80 to 100 pounds on a quarter beef. That's what you need to plan for. So
one other thing,
yes,
huge positive for anyone who, let's say you have space for a freezer, you've just never actually purchased and you never gone that all out and got a whole beef or half beef or whatever it is. It really can feel like it's a big price up front because you're like, oh man, that's a lot of money. Yes. But it's not when you compare it to what each thing would cost you in the grocery store. And then even more than that, it kind of is a safety net for any sort of intense fluctuation with the beef market.
Yep.
Because your cost of beef in a grocery store is dependent on other things.
That's right.
So if you are wanting to have that little bit of safety net that just makes you feel a little bit more secure as well, I mean, that beef is going to be fine in the freezer.
Forever.
Well over a year. Like people are like, how long can it be in your freezer? Well, my sister's still eating some of her beef in her freezer from like a year and a half ago, and she's trying to get through that because we've already processed some more cows. We've got 2 more steers we're going to process coming up because my mom is like, she's worried we don't have enough in our freezer, so we're bringing 2 down, and we're going to get them processed to get our deep freezes completely full again.
Nice.
So,
Henry, any closing thoughts or parting words for us? Anything that you maybe felt impressed to share with everybody?
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be rubbing elbows with the 2 of you. I mean, you guys play at a high intensity, and I like that. It's good for me to be in those circles and to be around people who are up to big things. It's encouraging to me because, the last few months it's been really a big lift to keep my headspace right, and with all the pressure that I'm under. And a lot of that is because not everybody across America does what they say they will do, and when you contract to have certain things in place and people fall apart on you, why you've got to keep going. And that's where we've been. So it's been quite the journey.
Well, hopefully with this, we can bring you some people to help you keep that mission going, especially from Utah. I mean, you can ship to the whole West Coast, but nothing like supporting right there in your backyard. So, Henry, we appreciate you being here today and all the wisdom you've shared with us over the years that we've known you. It's a pleasure, and we're glad to be in your circle too. So,
yeah, thank you both.
Yep, awesome.
It's good to see you. It's good to see that hat.
Yeah,
good to see you, bro.
You came on camera, and I was like, dang it. I'm still like just setting things up, and I've got all my hats in my room, and I'm like planning to put them up on the wall, and made me really wish I would have just put one on.
Yeah.
So next time.
Very good.
Well, that's it for us today, everybody. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Henry, appreciate you sharing your wisdom. Everybody, if you get a chance, check out UtahBeefProducers.com. Or visit From the Farm and look up Utah Beef Producers there. One last time, I'll throw Henry's number up here for you guys that might have cattle you need processed, 435-287-2333. And that's Utah Beef Producers. And with that, everybody have a blessed weekend.
Showed us anything our food supply chain really is.
I would hear the news talking about empty store shelves in the city, no meat. But yet I'm driving through the country and I see cattle standing in the field that a customer could buy. My name's AJ Richards, raised in St. George, Utah. My family are 5 generations of ranchers.
I'm Brooke Ants. Today it can be incredibly difficult to be a farmer or rancher, even for people that have been doing it generationally. It's not because of the work, but it's actually pressures from the big 4.
4 companies control 85% of our food supply chain. And in many cases, it's very clear that they're buying off politicians.
And if North Korea or China's Great Leap Forward have taught us anything, a centralized food supply can accidentally or intentionally kill a lot of people. Luckily, it's not all doom and gloom.
What's missing is a competitive marketplace. So I'm thinking about these unsold cows, and I just had this aha moment. What if somebody built a website similar to Airbnb, but instead of short-term rentals, it highlighted and connected you with local farmers and ranchers so that we could actually go right to the producer?
So FromTheFarm.org is a digital farmers market connecting you, the customer, with local farmers and ranchers who produce meat, vegetables, fruit, and dairy. Plus, you can pick it up locally, and many producers even have shipping options.
The most important value of decentralization is food sovereignty. The ability for you as a sovereign individual to have the right to buy your food and source it where you choose. If you know the name of the producer growing it, you have now insulated yourself from not having it, like when the store shelves were empty.
We the people can take back control of our food. Invest in your family, invest in From the Farm.
From the Farm helps families access food with more nutrition than what you're going to find at the grocery store.
Studies have shown repeatedly that locally farmed produce is more nutritionally rich than factory farmed food. It just is. You can't beat it.
Because these small family farmers and ranchers are growing it how they were taught by their grandparents and great-grandparents, which is quality over quantity, because they're putting their personal name on that product, not hidden behind some massive corporate logo.
Hormones, performance-enhancing drugs, and chemical treatments, including carbon monoxide, are just some of the things these corporations do to increase profits and improve shelf life, not your life.
Meanwhile, up to 40% of your meat's nutritional value is lost in the process. There's also the environmental impact from all the mileage your food racks up. Apples, 1,556 miles. Lettuce, 2,055 miles. And beef, a staggering 2,874 miles, all resulting in unnecessary pollution across the country. But when you buy from local growers, these numbers turn into these numbers.
Not only is shopping with From the Farm decreasing pollution and reclaiming your food sovereignty, but you are also getting a superior product. Parallel food economies, or buying local, is the future of food.
I was actually the first person to invest in From the Farm. I was 100% all in. I've started businesses. I've had some really cool opportunities in the entertainment industry and the sporting world, but getting healthy food into more Americans' hands is more important than anything I've ever done.
So right now we've assembled our team. We've got some amazing people on board to execute and make this happen. Like Isaac Barlow, who knows how to scale tech companies in the blue collar space because he's done it before. Now we're in the process of raising the funding from you guys to help us scale this to the next level. We can't do this alone. We need the strength of the American people behind us. Help us build a new food system that combines the wisdom of the past with the technology of the future. Investing in From the Farm isn't just a financial decision, it's an investment in our future, our small family farms, and our food sovereignty. Invest today.